What's going on, everyone? My name is Jacob Simpson, and I've been wholesaling real estate now for about 4.5 to 5 years. So recently, I've been working with a lot of other wholesalers and investors who have been going after properties on the MLS. Now, a lot of them do seem to be struggling, and the main thing I see that they're struggling with is how to negotiate. They don't know how to properly negotiate with these properties that are listed, and what ends up happening is 9 times out of 10, they throw out all of their negotiating points right out of the gate. And then the only thing they have left to negotiate on is price. And so in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how we negotiate with on-market properties and how we go about getting these deals locked up. So enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and dive right into this video. So I went ahead and put together a PowerPoint that we could go through to share exactly what we're gathering when we reach out to these properties, why this is going to help us make an offer. And then in the later part of the PowerPoint, I'm going to share with you exactly how we're making our offers and what that looks like. So as you can see, the PowerPoint is called Negotiating on MLS Deals. Let's go ahead and dive right into this. So the first thing that I do whenever I reach out to an MLS property is I just want to see if it's available. And if it is, I want to gather my 5 qualifiers when it comes to, making an offer. So those 5 qualifiers, I like to use the acronym called COMPT, COMPT. Now, most people don't include the O in there. So you can see that's condition, occupancy, motivation, price, and timeline. So the condition is really going to be like, what is the condition of the property, right? What are we working with? Do the pictures show an accurate representation of what the actual condition is, right? Or are those pictures old? Is there anything that the pictures can't show us? Is there foundation issues? Are there structural issues? Is there any mold that we need to be aware of? Are there any leaks? So these are all questions that I'm going to be asking the listing agent when I reach out to them, right? Does the property have central air, or does it need central air added to it? How old is the roof? Have there been any recent updates made to the property by the current homeowner, right? So we want to gather all of this information to try to get the best idea of what the condition of this property is. So that way we can determine if this is going to be a tear down, a full gut, or just a cosmetic rehab. Next, we move on to occupancy. Now, the reason I want to know about occupancy is because, is the property going to be vacant or occupied at close? Is it currently vacant right now, or do we have to work around homeowners to do showings, right? So is the property occupied or is it vacant? If it's occupied, is it owner occupied? Is it tenant occupied? Are there squatters in there? Are there non-paying family members, right? We need to know who's living there so we can address that situation accordingly. If it's occupied, will it be vacant at close, or are the sellers looking for a post-occupancy period? Or are they looking for a rent back, right? So we need to know this so that way at closing, if they're looking to stay 3 weeks after closing, we can be prepared for that, right? Or if we need to push the closing date out 3 weeks from there, so that way they can get out before closing, we know we can do that as well. If it's occupied, do they already have a place lined up, right? So if they're trying to close in 14 days, but they're still living in the property and they're saying it's going to be vacant at close, well, do they already have somewhere lined up to be able to make that happen? Are they going to go stay with the friends, or, are they going to go stay with some friends? Or, are they just planning to get it under contract, and then once it's under contract, just start looking and hope they find something by the closing date? All of these things are going to help us when it comes to making our offer, right? The next thing is going to be motivation. Why are they looking to sell? Now, a lot of times the listing agent can't share this information with you. They do sometimes. So what I like to do is, when they're kind of beating around the bush and they're not sharing it, I like to make a false assumption if they don't tell me. So let's say that the property is vacant and the homeowners no longer live there, and it was just one of them. I might throw out like, oh, okay, it sounds like the homeowners were just looking to downsize their property because this one was a little bit too big. And they might correct you and say, oh, no, that's not it at all. It was actually a rental property. And then, he just got tired of renting to those tenants, and so he wants to liquidate the property now. So by making that false assumption, you essentially plant the seed in their head to correct you with the actual reasoning, right? And then you also want to actively be listening throughout the call, because they might tell you the motivation of the seller way before you even get to this question. Real estate agents love to talk, so really be listening when they're talking to you. Price. So this is pretty straightforward, right? What's the price that they're trying to get for the property? Are they flexible on price? Have there been a lot of offers and interest? If there has been a lot of interest and no offers, why do you think that is? If there's been a lot of offers, but the seller hasn't accepted anything, why not? And then you can't really see this, but it says based on offers and the interest you're getting, are you thinking that a homeowner or an investor is going to come in and pick this property up? And then if any other investors have offered or made offers on it, what do those offers look like? If you can get the price out of them, that's great. But do those offers include covering closing costs? Do they have buyers agents involved? Try to get a good idea of what those investor offers are looking like, or even homeowner offers, right? Timeline. How soon are the sellers looking to sell? So do the sellers need to sell by a certain date? Are they in a rush to sell? For instance, let's say they're closing on a property in a month from now. They've already put down the EMD and they need this property to close in order to fund that closing of the next deal. They might be in a time crunch to close within the next 30 days or less, so that way they can fund their house. Some might not even be in a rush. So you want to try to figure out how soon are they looking to close. Again, this is all going to help us when it comes to negotiating. And then again, we want to pay close attention to the questions. We'll likely uncover the timeline when we're asking about occupancy or motivation. So, if they're super motivated, they might tell us they need to be out or they need to sell it in 2 weeks. If they're currently in the property when we're asking about occupancy and they tell us that they're closing on another property in 2 months from now and they can't move until then, well, now we know their timeline is 2 months, right? So really be paying attention to the other questions. And again, just whatever the agent is saying, because a lot of times you'll uncover these qualifiers without even having to ask about them. And then this brings us to our negotiating points. So when it comes to negotiating on a property, these are the negotiating points that we use. So we use price, closing costs, commissions, the earnest money deposit amount, the EMD due date, the inspection period length, the closing date length, and then also explaining where we're coming from when we're making the offer. So that way they're not just thinking we're out for lunch if we're on a low offer, right? So let's go ahead and dive into each of these negotiating points. And then I'm going to share with you exactly what it looks like when we're making an offer. So price, that's pretty straightforward. It's the price of the property. What are they looking to sell it for, right? Closing costs, the price would be what you're offering, not what they're looking to sell it for. Closing costs. In traditional real estate transactions, the buyer and the sellers will have split closing costs. So each party will be responsible for their half of the closing costs. What we can do is we can elect to cover both sides as the buyer, so that way the seller isn't responsible for their half of the closing costs, and then they can save some money, and their net proceeds will increase because of that. Commissions. In a traditional transaction, the seller would pay a commission to the listing agent and the buying agent. This typically is going to be around 5 to 6% of the sales price. So what I do is I go into these transactions without a buyer's agent. So I'm unrepresented on the buyer side. And what this means is you can essentially waive your buyer side commission because there's no one representing you on the buyer side. But don't mention this right away. And the reason being is because if you make an offer at $250 and they accept that offer, or they decline that offer, you can come in and say, well, I'll waive my buyer side commission. Even though, because you're unrepresented, it's already going to be waived in the beginning. But when you say that as a negotiation tip, then it kind of triggers something in their mind to be like, oh, okay, $250 plus waive buyer side commission, and the seller will hopefully come down some. So if you're going into it unrepresented, you can waive your buyer side commission, or if you have a deal with your buyer's agent where they'll waive their buyer side commission and then you pay them a commission, or you split your assignment fee with them, you can do that as well. But again, you don't want to throw this out right away. EMD, earnest money deposit amount, right? So how much are they putting down after ratifying the contract for consideration? The EMD could be $1, $5, $10, $50,000. It can be whatever amount you want to put down. typically the higher EMDs are going to show the more serious you are. So if your EMD is $1, they're not going to really take you serious. Whereas if your EMD is $5,000, they'll probably take that offer pretty seriously. EMD due date. So usually the EMD is due immediately after ratification, but sometimes you can push it out to 3 days, 4 days, 7 days, 10 days. Again, the sooner you can put up the EMD, the more serious your offer is going to be taken. Inspection period, the length of the study period on the property. So this is how long we can do our due diligence on the property to make sure that the numbers work. If you're wholesaling, it's the amount of time that you have to bring a buyer in before you can cancel your contract and before your earnest money deposit goes hard. This can be any amount of days. You can also waive your inspection period. Your inspection period can be, it can be, you can cancel during your inspection period sometimes, or sometimes they only allow you to negotiate. So going on to the next point, in an inspection, it can be canceled or negotiated. Typically, you want to ensure that your inspection allows you to cancel and not just negotiate. Because if you sign where it's only able to negotiate and you try to cancel, well, you might lose your EMD because the inspection didn't allow you to cancel. So make sure all of your inspections do allow that cancellation if needed. Closing date. Again, pretty straightforward. How soon can you close on the property? So again, going back to, if they need 30 days, then your closing date is 30 days, right? So how do we negotiate? So this is really where I see a lot of people get held up on when it comes to making an offer. Again, they throw out all of their negotiating points right out of the gate. So let's go ahead and put together an example. Let's say there's a property listed on the market at $250,000 and we want to offer $200,000. So where I see most people go wrong when it comes to negotiating is they'll just throw out all of their negotiation points. So in the example we just put out there at 200,000, they might be like, hey, I'll offer 200,000. I'm coming into this unrepresented, so I'll also waive my buyer side commission and we can cover all of the closing costs. We can close in 14 days with a 3-day inspection. You literally just gave yourself nothing to negotiate on besides price now. So how we do it is, again, using the same exact example, the 200,000 example, we would come into we would reach out to the listing agent and we would basically say, hey, 250,000 is too high for us. I think we really need to be at around 200,000, probably right around that 190 to 200,000 mark. I typically like to use ballparks at first. Do you think this is going to be something your seller will accept? If they say yes, great. You just got an offer accepted at 200,000. You didn't have to cover closing costs. So the closing costs will be split 50-50 and you're good to go. Now, if they come back and decline, then I move on to waive buyer side commission. Now, the reason I use buyer side commission first is because I'm going into this unrepresented anyways. So my buyer side commission is going to be waived no matter what. They don't necessarily know that. So when you throw that out there, it's going to jog their memory and they'll start thinking, oh, okay, I get to shave off 2.5-3% of the commission on the seller side, even though they could have done that in the first place with your original offer, but they didn't take that into consideration until you said it. So I start with price. If it's declined, then I'll use the same exact price and offer waive buyer side commission. Then if they decline both of those, so typically what will happen is I'll say 200,000, but we'll waive buyer side commission. They might be at 250, so then they'll come down to 240. Okay, the sellers can do 240 if you waive buyer side commission. Then I'll say, okay, great. Well, would they be able to do 200,000? I'll waive my buyer side commission and I'll cover the seller's closing costs. They're like, oh, okay, let me go talk to them. Then they go back and they say, hey, the seller said they could come down to 225 if you waive buyer side commission and cover all of their closing costs. And I'm like, okay, great. They need to sell in 14 days. My closing date is, 30 days out from now. I might be able to use that closing date to my advantage, right? I might be able to say, well, hey, we'll keep all the terms the same. I'll do 200,000, but I can shrink that closing date down to 14 days and close, in a timely manner for your seller. If that doesn't matter to them, if they're not in a time crunch, then you start negotiating on price. But basically, I do price, then I throw in buyer side commission, then I throw in closing costs. And then if Any of the other things like timeline, inspection period, EMD amount, EMD due date, if any of those things matter to them, I'm going to use those to negotiate as well before I get to price. Price is always going to be the last thing I negotiate on. And hopefully the sellers will accept your offer before you start negotiating on price. And then once you do get to price, you don't want to just jump up $10, $15, $20,000 all carelessly. Bump it up maybe 2,500, maybe 3,500, right? Show them that you really don't have that much wiggle room on the price. And then again, this is really going to be based on the actual deal. So if it's like been on the market for 5 hours, obviously you're going to want to be more competitive in your terms than if it's been listed for, 45 days. So this is just how we negotiate. Again, just a kind of quick recap. We do price first. If they decline our offer, we throw in, we waive our buyer side commission. If they still decline our offer, we do the same exact price, waive buyer side commission, and cover closing costs. If they still decline our offer, then we try to negotiate on the other terms. And if that doesn't matter to them, then we go to price and we negotiate on price. All of those put together have been able to get us a lot of deals because, again, what I see happening a lot of times is people will say, we'll offer you $200,000. I'll cover the closing costs and I'll waive my buyer side commission. Now the only thing you have to negotiate on is price. So if they come back at 240, you can't throw any of those in there to try to get them down now. So now you have to come up to 210 and try to work that whole, meet me in the half thing or meet me in the middle thing. But a lot of times that doesn't work. So I found this to be the best way to negotiate with agents. It's allowed me to get a lot of deals locked up. We actually just sold 3 MLS deals in the past 2 to 3 weeks. And we just started MLS outreach probably like a month ago. So I'm telling you, when it comes to making offers, this is going to be a lifesaver for you. And I definitely recommend everyone gives it a try. So hopefully this was beneficial to everyone. Again, this is how we negotiate on all of our deals. This is how I have all of my team negotiate. And this is how I tell everyone who I'm helping and coaching. This is how I teach them to negotiate as well. So again, hopefully this was helpful. If it was, feel free to share this with someone and I will see you all in the next video.